This jet actually started off as a development of the troubled F-102 Interceptor, but it went on to have many troubles of its own. The original intention was to rectify performance shortcomings of the original F-102 Delta Dagger design from the early 1950s. This new plane, which was originally designated F-102B, but later renamed F-106, was intended to have a new engine, a new weapons system, a redesigned fuselage with a new air intake design, and a host of other smaller changes. Well, almost as soon as it first flew in 1956, the problems started. In short, the entire electrical system was unreliable, the engine had a bad habit of failing in flight, it was slower than expected, the MA-1 weapons system simply didn't work, and most critically, the ejection seat was fundamentally flawed. The ejection system had been designed for high-altitude ejections, but had a complicated procedure and it didn't work well at lower altitudes. A dozen pilots were actually killed trying to eject from the F-106 before these issues with the ejection seat were finally worked out. Now, regardless of the shortcomings, the F-106 Delta Dart entered service in 1959. As soon as operational units started getting their hands on the plane, it proved to be a highly polarizing jet. The pilots loved the performance, when everything was working right, but there were still a lot of unresolved issues that led to occasional system failures. The jet was upgraded and rebuilt many times during its service life, and the MA-1 fire control system itself was upgraded more than 60 times over the years to slowly work out most of the problems with it. Starting in 1972, a major upgrade package was rolled out to a portion of the F-106 fleet called Project 6-Shooter that retrofitted an internal cannon into the weapons bay, redesigned the cockpit, and upgraded some of the other internal systems. Additionally, the F-106 was used as a testbed for a new helmet-mounted sighting system, but I couldn't find any evidence that the helmet-mounted sight was used operationally. In the end, the F-106 fleet never saw any combat and flew into the 1980s with Guard and Reserve units. What we get in War Thunder is the F-106A 6-Shooter, a jet fighter in Rank 6 of the American Air Tree at battle rating 9.3. This is the main reward from the Skyguard event in the summer of 2025. Now, this jet doesn't get a ballistics computer or radar warning receiver, but does get some interesting systems. Its radar is the MA-1, an I-band set with BVR and ACM targeting, and also contains both an infrared search and track unit and a helmet-mounted sight, making it one of the most advanced targeting systems in the game at this BR. For loadouts, the 6 can take a pair of drop tanks and up to 4 air-to-air missiles in an internal weapons bay. Your infrared missile is the AIM-4G Super Falcon. This is a rear aspect heat seeker with fairly limited range, best used within 3 kilometers. Notably, this missile doesn't have a proximity fuse and needs a direct hit on the target in order to detonate. Your radar missile is the AIM-4F Super Falcon. This is a semi-active radar missile that uses a pulse signal, also with fairly limited range, but with the advantage that it can be used in head-on shots. Like the 4G, the 4F lacks a proximity fuse and needs a direct impact in order to detonate its warhead. It's worth mentioning that despite the stat cards listing both of the AIM-4s as being 27G missiles, both of these are incredibly easy to dodge due to both maneuvering limitations and tracking angle limitations on the seekers, and needing direct hits. Now, I want to warn you about the flight performance. If you're not used to jets and you pulled this thing out of the event or got it off the marketplace, you're going to need to get ready for a serious learning curve, not just with moving into a supersonic plane, but with how this one in particular actually flies compared to other jets. First, the F-106 is fast. It's only at BR 9.3, but it can comfortably cruise at Mach 1.3 or higher at fairly low altitudes, with the afterburner of course, which is just insane for a jet that can fight subsonic gunslingers. The acceleration is good, and at high speeds the rate of climb is excellent. Having a really clean area-ruled fuselage with an internal weapons bay makes a pretty significant difference, and you'll notice it with the 6. However, at some parts of the power curve, there are still some other jets that can out-accelerate this thing, so you do have to be careful. Stuff like F-4Cs, MiG-21s, or even Harriers can outpace this jet briefly at lower to medium speeds. Also, don't bother with the drop tanks. You don't need them. By the time you get into combat, you're going to have burned off enough fuel, so just don't bother with the drop tanks. Now, the turn performance is also fairly good, but with a huge caveat. The energy retention is absolutely awful. If you go full pull, you can get one really amazing AOA turn out of this thing, but you'll drop 80% of your airspeed in seconds. If you try to dogfight with this jet, you're going to need to line up a kill really fast, because it just doesn't have the staying power for a twisting dogfight. Horizontal scissors is especially weak, and if you get sucked into that garbage, expect to have a bad time. Its ideal turn speed is about 650 to 700 kilometers an hour, but again, in a hard pull, you won't stay at that speed for more than a second or so. If you watch my reviews to find the weaknesses of the planes I cover, this is the big one for the F-106. It just can't survive a prolonged turn fight against the majority of opponents it faces. If it's an F-104 or a Yak-38, you'll probably still get them, but not much else. If, for whatever reason, you need to dump some energy quickly, it is worth mentioning that the air brake on this plane is actually really effective, so it's there if you need it. Taking the 6 into air battles is, again, going to be a huge learning curve if you're jumping into this thing without really being accustomed to the meta up at this BR. I want to start off by talking about the weapons system. In short, it's really cumbersome, which is going to be a big part of that learning curve if you're new to jets like this. The radar has a number of range and angle settings, an infrared search and track mode, bore sight and helmet-mounted targeting that can be a little awkward to have to cycle through during an intercept, and critically, opening the weapons bay blocks the gun, so you're gonna have to take a little time to get used to operating the weapon system on this thing, and that's okay. Next, the Falcon missiles. In real life, these things had a kill rate of under 10%, and frankly, that's accurately reflected in the game. Unless you are incredibly picky with your shots, the majority of AIM-4s you fire are gonna miss, and that's mostly because they're short range, they're slow, and they don't have a proximity fuse. If you try flying the F-106 out, deliberately trying to set up missile shots, it's probably going to be a frustrating experience because of how ineffective they are. You're almost never going to get conventional dogfight kills with these missiles. Instead, think of them more like weapons of opportunity. If you happen to catch somebody in a low energy state at the top of a loop, or like flying straight and level at high altitude, or burning away from you under 2 kilometers, toss an AIM-4 at them and see what happens. But if you really want to try and use this as a missile thrower, your best bet is going to be to make high-speed passes across the battlefield looking for targets of opportunity on each pass. Don't let your speed dip, and if you don't see anything worth shooting at, just fly off and circle back from a distance. Slow and tedious, but it's probably the best use case if you want to focus on using the AIM-4s. As far as being a gunfighter, your ideal tactic will be kinda similar. Make high-speed energy passes from higher altitudes and try to avoid twisting dogfights. It's not super exciting to play like that, or frankly to watch, but it'll be the most effective use of this jet. On that note, the cannon on this jet is kind of a monster at this BR, and you get tons of ammo, so don't hold back from spray and pray, especially in a head-on. The plane really is a pretty solid gun platform as long as you stay fast. Visually, the F-106 is a pretty nice-looking jet. There are 2 extra paint jobs you can get for it, but honestly, I like the default skin, and it goes really well with my decal, so that's a nice bonus. No big errors or anything on the 3D model, except for the drag chute, which you'll see in a moment. And speaking of which, the jet can be a little tricky to land if you're not used to fast deltas like this. No flaps, so you might have to come in a little hot in order to keep from stalling out. The air brake works well, and it gets a drag chute, so the landing roll won't be too far though. You can put the gear out at a little over 400 kilometers an hour. The cockpit offers good visibility out to the sides, and the instruments are easy to follow, but the centerline forward bracing is a major problem. The gun was almost impossible to aim in VR, which really sucked. Notably, you get an interesting style HUD with the radar sweep projected up onto the reflex sight, which is actually a nice touch, even if you can't really see anything outside the front of the plane. To close out on the F-106A. This jet is crazy fast. It's got a great cannon with a lot of ammo. It's got a really advanced sensor system for its BR, and it's an event vehicle, so you don't have to grind the whole US tech tree to get it. However, the energy retention is just awful. Its missiles are unreliable, and it's got a really slow-paced hit-and-run playstyle that a lot of players don't enjoy. The final verdict on the 6 is that this is a fairly fun challenge to fly, just remember not to try using it as a dogfighter. It's neither OP nor a struggle bus. As always, thanks for watching, and if you enjoyed this video, check out this next one.